welcome to Incoming, the vidcast in which I look back at my favourite miniature releases in the last 7 days. This is episode 16, and looking at releases for week ending the 4th of September 2009, and I, as always, am your host, Neil Shuck. Well, historical miniature releases have actually been few and far between this week, so I only have a top 8 for you, and one of those is a bit suspect. You'll see what I mean when we get there. So starting off at number 8, we have a set of new releases from Raiden Miniatures. Now Raiden produced a whole host of 1/285th scale aircraft, and these are the 3 latest additions to their collection. And of these 3, I must admit my favourite is the F9F Cougar. Nice, precise looking detailed work from Raiden, as always. Number 7, and the first of several new releases from a new company. This is Boot Hill Miniatures. Now, as I say, a brand new company, and they're starting off by releasing a set of figures for the Texan War of Independence. So very much a mix of Texan USA figures, and starting off with some Mexicans. And here we have 3 examples of their set of vaqueros. And the detailing on these is nice enough. Nothing too dynamic in the posing. But the one thing I think that stands out for these is the facial detail, especially on the second of these figures. So it looks like an interesting start for Boot Hill. And actually, as we carry on, at number 6 we have a set of Mexican Presidial troops. And these again are quite interesting. Nice enough details, which as you can see can be picked out by a decent paint job. But again, the thing that stands out for me are some of the facial expressions on the figures. So, well worth a look, especially of course if you happen to own the Alamo expansion for Legends of the Old West. Next up we have, I think, a slight cheat, as I think these are actually a re-release. Now these are figures from Foundry of King John II and the Black Prince. I believe these were originally on a special offer if you ordered the medieval expansion for Warhammer Ancient Battles. But now they're being released as their own diorama. And they are great looking figures, so it's nice to see them back in circulation. Next up is the one that I think is possibly a bit dodgy as an historical miniature. Again, this is back to Boot Hill Miniatures as part of their range of, for want of a better word, Mexican Wars. They have released a figure of Zorro. Now, this is available in 2 different versions. You have a mounted version and a foot version. Pretty well sculpted and nicely posed in both versions, although it has to be said, I don't think Zorro ever wielded a rapier that was anything like that sort of size. So, suffering from the typical oversized sword weaponry, so sort of thing you usually only expect to find on a fantasy figure, to be honest. So looking a little bit out of place. Into the top 3, and it's back to our old friends Campaign Game Miniatures. Carrying on with their Napoleonic releases, now they've done quite a bit of English and French. They're moving on to some more of the Allied nations, and these are their 1st Brunswick infantry. Now, I'm not a great expert at all on Brunswick uniforms, so I really am just going by eye candy value on these, but I do like them. As we're seeing with both their British and their French infantry ranges so far, you get a nice selection of infantry figures in both march attack, rifles at ready and firing poses. And with this set you get a nice selection of no less than 4 different command packs. So a good release from CGM here. Nice to see them continuing on form. Number 2, and it's back to Foundry, and this is another one which a lot of people are saying is a re-release, although I must admit, if it is a re-release, I must have missed it first time round. Although given that their other release this week is a rehash of different figures, I can well imagine that this is the same. This is another diorama, and this is from Spartacus. It's a nicely posed and sculpted diorama, nice proportions on the figures, and it certainly has a good dynamic flow to it. I mean, even with it being at number 2, I have to say that if it was in a stronger week, then it would be much further down the ratings, I think. A good workman-like piece, but nothing spectacular. However, going to number 1 for this week, and I think this set is number 1 by quite some way. Now, we've seen these before. These are the new Afghan releases from Eureka. A few weeks ago they previewed these with the Rebels, but as well as the releases that we've seen before, they're also releasing this rocket launcher. And I think this is a stunning model. I mean, I do like all of Eureka's modern Afghans. As I've seen more of them, they've really grown on me. And although, you say, well, okay, it's a gun, it's a rocket launcher. So primarily you're awarding number 1 to a gun. I think The models just look so good. And it's just a couple of the little details, like there's a guy fishing a rocket out of an ammo crate, and both their AK-47s are just leant up against the crate. That really is just such a nice piece. So well worthy of number 1 this week, in my opinion. And well, that's all I have time for this week. As I say, a bit of a quieter week this week, at least on the historical side. But I hope you've seen something that you might find of interest. But if you want to see some more video reviews, don't forget you can now look at or download a sci-fi and fantasy version of this podcast. And you can find that either on the Meeples and Miniatures iTunes feed, on the Meeples and Miniatures website, or on YouTube. Well, that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.